My name is Jason Fairburn, and 3 weeks ago I discovered that my wife Laura has been screwing our real estate agent in our marital bed while I was at work debugging code for corporate assholes who think urgent means I want it yesterday. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd been getting serviced while I was in service to everyone else. I'm 38, make decent money as an IT specialist for a Dallas consulting firm, and until recently believed I had what every suburban dad dreams of: a beautiful wife who's a corporate attorney, 2 smart daughters named Beth and Janie, and a 4-bedroom house in Meadowbrook Heights where the lawns are greener than the envy between neighbors. The first crack in my perfect life appeared on a Tuesday morning when I found Laura's burner phone wedged between our couch cushions. She'd apparently dropped it during one of her late-night work sessions that had become increasingly frequent. The password was our old wedding anniversary, the date we'd actually gotten married, not the fake one she tells people to make our story sound more romantic. The text made my stomach drop like a broken elevator. Scott Williams, our real estate agent, had been sending her messages that would make a porn writer blush. Can't wait to taste you again. And your husband has no idea how lucky he is, followed by explicit photos that proved Scott spent more time at the gym than he did showing houses. Laura had responded with equal enthusiasm. He's working late again. Come over at 9. Use the back door. The double entendre wasn't accidental. I sat in my home office, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal while listening to her shower upstairs, probably washing off the scent of another man. Beth and Janie were at school, blissfully unaware that their mother was systematically destroying our family. The worst part wasn't the cheating, it was the casual cruelty in their messages. Scott had written, "Does he still think you're working on the Henderson case?" Laura's response, "Jason believes whatever I tell him. He's too busy with his computers to notice anything real." That afternoon, I received a cream-colored envelope in the mail that felt like a cosmic joke. My ex-girlfriend, Tiffany Rogers, was getting married to some guy named Gregory Shaw in Austin next month, and she'd invited me to witness her perfect day with my perfect man. The invitation was pretentious, with gold lettering and a photo of Tiffany and Gregory looking like they'd stepped out of a luxury car commercial. Tiffany and I had dated for 2 years in college before she decided I wasn't ambitious enough for her Instagram lifestyle dreams. She'd become a social media influencer, the kind who sells overpriced supplements and posts motivational quotes over sunset photos. Her fiancé Gregory looked like every other venture capitalist bro. Expensive suit, perfect teeth, and the kind of confident smile that suggested he'd never faced real consequences for anything. I laughed bitterly as I read her handwritten note. "Jason, I know it's been years, but I'd love for you to see how wonderfully everything worked out. Gregory is everything I ever dreamed of, successful, generous, and completely devoted to me. I hope you can make it. XOX Tiffany." The timing felt like the universe was mocking me. My wife was cheating, my ex was flaunting her perfect relationship, and I was sitting in a house that suddenly felt like a beautifully decorated prison. That evening, Laura came home with takeout from our favorite Italian place, a peace offering for another late night at the office. She looked stunning as always, her auburn hair perfectly styled, her business suit tailored to show off the figure that had first caught my attention 15 years ago. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, setting down containers of pasta and breadsticks. "Enlightening," I said, watching her face for any sign of guilt. There wasn't any. Laura had perfected the art of compartmentalization. She kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of cologne that wasn't mine. Scott wore something expensive and musky. I'd noticed it during our house hunting days when Laura had insisted we use him despite his obvious incompetence. "The girls called," Laura said, opening wine. "They're staying at Mom's tonight. Something about a school project." I knew this was a lie. Laura's mother, Susan, had mentioned at last week's barbecue that she was visiting her sister in Houston this week. Laura had arranged for the girls to stay elsewhere so she could have another evening with Scott. "That's nice," I said. "Gives us time to talk?" Laura's smile faltered slightly. "About what?" I pulled out her burner phone and set it on the kitchen island between us. "About your side business." The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. Laura was nothing if not a skilled attorney. "I can explain," she said. "I'm sure you can. You're very creative with explanations." She sat down across from me, her wineglass trembling slightly in her hand. "It's complicated, Jason." "Is it?" Because the text seemed pretty straightforward. Scott comes over, you two have connection in our bed, and then you both laugh about what an oblivious fool I am. Laura's composure cracked. "It's not like that." "Then what's it like? Help me understand how screwing our real estate agent in our marital bed is complicated." She started crying, the kind of calculated tears she used in court when she needed sympathy from a jury. "I never meant for this to happen. Scott and I just connected, and you've been so distant lately, always working, never paying attention to me. So this is my fault? No, but you have to understand. I felt lonely. Scott makes me feel alive again. I almost laughed. Scott makes you feel alive. The guy who couldn't sell ice cream in hell? The guy who showed us the same house 3 times because he forgot we'd already seen it? He's more than you think he is. He's exactly what I think he is. A gym rat with a real estate license who saw an opportunity to screw a lawyer's wife and took it? Laura stood up, her tears stopping as quickly as they'd started. I won't be talked to like this in my own home. Our home? That we bought together. That I've been paying the mortgage on while you've been playing house with Scott? She grabbed her purse and keys. I'm going to stay at Sarah's tonight. We can discuss this when you're ready to be rational. After she left, I sat in our kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of our fake reconciliation dinner, and realized that my marriage was over. The question wasn't whether I'd forgive Laura, it was how I'd make her pay for 15 years of taking me for granted. I picked up Tiffany's wedding invitation and smiled for the first time in weeks. Maybe it was time to RSVP yes to her perfect wedding. After all, I had a feeling it might not be as perfect as she thought. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day documenting Laura's affair. I'd learned a few things about digital forensics during my IT career, and Laura had been sloppy with her electronic footprints. Her laptop, which she'd left behind in her dramatic exit, contained months of evidence. Hotel receipts charged to her business credit card. Romantic dinner reservations for 2 on nights she'd claimed to be working late. Photos of her and Scott at restaurants across Dallas, looking like teenagers in love. The most damaging evidence was a series of emails between Laura and her best friend Sarah Chen, where Laura detailed her affair with clinical precision. Scott is everything Jason isn't, she'd written, confident, passionate, spontaneous. He makes me remember what it feels like to be desired instead of just convenient. Sarah had encouraged the affair, even covering for Laura by providing fake alibis. You deserve to be happy, Sarah had written. Jason's a good guy, but he's boring. You're too vibrant for suburban mediocrity. I printed everything and organized it in a folder marked evidence. Then I called my lawyer, David Martinez, who'd handled our house purchase and will preparations. Jason, David said when I explained the situation, I'm sorry to hear this. Laura always seemed devoted to you and the girls. Apparently she was devoted to someone else. Do you want to file for divorce? Eventually. But first, I want to make sure I'm protected. Laura's going to try to take everything. The house, the girls, half my retirement. She's a lawyer, and she's ruthless when she wants something. David scheduled an appointment for the following day. In the meantime, document everything. Don't do anything that could be construed as harassment or revenge. The court will look at your behavior during this period. That afternoon, Laura returned with Sarah in tow for moral support. They found me in the living room, reading a book and acting like nothing had happened. We need to talk, Laura announced. Sarah gave me a look of barely concealed contempt. She was a marketing executive, the kind of woman who used phrases like living your truth and authentic self-expression to justify bad behavior. Hello, Sarah, I said pleasantly. How's the covering for adultery business treating you? Sarah's eyes widened. Excuse me? I pulled out a printed email and read aloud. Laura, I told Tom you were with me at the wine tasting last Thursday. He seemed to believe it. You owe me dinner for this alibi service. I looked up at Sarah's horrified face. That was the night Laura was with Scott at the Omni Hotel? Room 412. Charged to her American Express. Laura sat down heavily. You went through my emails? Your laptop was open. I was looking for our tax documents and stumbled across your correspondence. Fascinating reading material. Sarah stood up quickly. I should go. No, stay, I said. You're part of this story. You've been enabling Laura's affair for months, providing fake alibis, encouraging her to cheat on her husband and lie to her children. I think you should hear what happens next. Sarah looked at Laura, who nodded reluctantly. I've documented everything, I continued. The hotel receipts, the restaurant charges, the photos, the emails between you two planning Laura's deception. I've also moved half our joint savings into a separate account, changed the locks on the house, and scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney. Laura's composure finally cracked completely. You can't lock me out of my own house. Our house. And I can, actually. I spoke with a lawyer this morning. Since you've abandoned the marital home to pursue your affair, I have the right to secure the property. You can collect your belongings, but you can't move back in? What about the girls? They can stay with me in their actual home or visit you wherever you're staying. I assume Scott has room at his place, since you've been spending so much time there. Sarah finally found her voice. Jason, you're being vindictive. I laughed. Vindictive? I'm being practical. Laura has been systematically deceiving me for months while planning to divorce me and take half of everything I've worked for. She just didn't expect to get caught before she could position herself advantageously. Laura started crying again. I never planned to divorce you. Then what was the end game, Laura? Keep screwing Scott indefinitely while I paid for your lifestyle? Eventually, I was going to find out. I thought maybe you'd find someone else too, that we could have an open marriage. The audacity was breathtaking. You thought I'd be okay with you cheating because I might want to cheat too? It happens all the time. Married couples who stay together but have other relationships. That requires honesty and consent. You had neither. Sarah tried to mediate. Maybe you two could try counseling. Would you go to counseling with a spouse who'd been lying to you for months? I asked. Who'd been mocking you to their lover and friends? Who'd been using your money to fund their affair? Sarah had no answer. Laura wiped her eyes. What do you want from me? I want you to leave. Take your belongings and go live with Scott or Sarah or whoever will have you. I want you to explain to Beth and Janie why Mommy won't be living here anymore. And I want you to think about the fact that you destroyed our family for a guy who probably can't spell commitment. After they left, I called Beth and Janie at their friend's house where they were actually staying. I'd tracked them down through Beth's phone GPS, another skill from my IT background that was proving useful. Dad? Beth said when she answered. Mom said you two were having problems. We are, sweetheart, but it's not your fault, and it doesn't change how much I love you and your sister. Are you getting divorced? Beth was 12 and smart enough to understand the implications. Probably, but you'll always have a home with me, and you can see Mom whenever you want. Is she really dating Mr. Williams? The question hit me like a punch. How do you know about that? Janie saw them kissing in his car outside school last week. She thought it was weird, but didn't want to get Mom in trouble. My 9-year-old daughter had been keeping her mother's secret, probably feeling confused and guilty about what she'd witnessed. You and Janie didn't do anything wrong, I said. Sometimes adults make bad choices, and kids shouldn't have to carry those secrets. That evening, I sat in my quiet house and made a decision. Laura had humiliated me, betrayed our family, and was probably planning to take me for everything she could in a divorce. But I wasn't going to be the pathetic cuckolded husband who rolled over and accepted his fate. I picked up Tiffany's wedding invitation again. My ex-girlfriend was marrying her perfect man in 3 weeks, and she'd specifically invited me to witness her happiness. I had a feeling that Gregory Shaw might not be as perfect as Tiffany believed, and I had the skills to find out. After all, if I was going to lose everything anyway, I might as well have some fun in the process. I spent the next week diving deep into Gregory Shaw's background while maintaining the appearance of a devastated husband going through a divorce. Laura had moved in with Sarah temporarily, and Scott had been making himself scarce around the neighborhood. My IT skills proved invaluable for digital detective work. Gregory's social media presence was carefully curated. Photos of expensive vacations, luxury cars, and inspirational quotes about success and abundance. He claimed to be an angel investor and business mentor, but the details were vague. A deeper search revealed some interesting inconsistencies. Gregory had only existed online for about 3 years. Before that, there was no digital footprint for anyone with his name and background. His LinkedIn profile listed previous experience at companies that either no longer existed or had no record of employing him. The breakthrough came when I ran his photos through a reverse image search. One picture, supposedly taken at his investment firm's office, had actually been lifted from a stock photography website. Another photo showed him at what he claimed was his vacation home in the Hamptons, but the same image appeared in a real estate listing for a property that had been sold 2 years ago to someone else. I was dealing with either an elaborate catfish or a sophisticated con man. My investigation was interrupted by a call from Beth. Dad, can you pick us up from Mom's? She and Mr. Williams are having a loud fight, and it's making Janie upset. I drove to Sarah's apartment complex where I could hear Laura and Scott arguing through the thin walls before I even reached the door. The girls were sitting on the front steps, looking miserable. What's the fight about? I asked Beth as we walked to my car. Money, I think. Mr. Williams wants Mom to give him some money for his business, but she says she doesn't have access to it anymore. Scott was apparently learning that dating a woman going through a contentious divorce wasn't as lucrative as he'd hoped. Laura's income was substantial, but most of our assets were tied up in property and retirement accounts that couldn't be easily accessed. That weekend, I took the girls camping at Lake Texoma, partly to give them a break from the drama and partly to test a theory. I'd noticed that Scott drove a new BMW X5 that seemed expensive for a real estate agent who, according to public records, hadn't sold a house in 6 months. While we were roasting marshmallows, I casually asked Beth if she'd noticed anything unusual about Scott. "He's always talking about money," she said. "Like how much things cost and how much money he's going to make. It's weird." "Did he ever mention where his money comes from?" "He told Mom he had some big deal coming through, something about investment properties, but he asked her to loan him money for it, which doesn't make sense if he's already rich." Scott was running some kind of scam, using his relationship with Laura to try to access our assets. The realization made me angry, but also gave me an idea. When we returned from camping, I found Laura waiting at the house with a locksmith. "You can't keep me out of my own home," she said. "Actually, I can. I spoke with my lawyer. Since you abandoned the marital residence to cohabit with your boyfriend, I have the right to maintain exclusive occupancy pending divorce proceedings." The locksmith looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, if your name isn't on the deed and you don't have a court order, I can't help you." Laura's face turned red. "My name is on the deed." I pulled out my phone and showed her a document. "Not anymore. I refinanced the house last week using my separate credit and income. The bank was happy to approve the loan since I've been making all the payments anyway. You're no longer legally entitled to enter this property." This was a bluff. Refinancing takes weeks, not days. But Laura didn't know that. "You can't do this." "I can, and I did. You made your choice when you decided to move in with Scott. Now live with the consequences." After she left, I called David Martinez to actually start the refinancing process I'd lied about. "Is that legal?" he asked. "Morally questionable, legally sound. She abandoned the marital home. I'm protecting my interest in the property." "What about her belongings?" "She can collect them with a police escort, like any other trespasser." That evening, I received a call from Mike Patterson, my best friend since college. Mike was a software engineer who'd moved to Austin 5 years ago, and he had news about Tiffany's wedding. "You're not going to believe this," Mike said. "I did some digging on your ex's fiancé, like you asked. Gregory Shaw is a fake name. His real name is Gary Schultz, and he's wanted by the FBI for securities fraud." "You're kidding." "Absolutely serious. He ran a Ponzi scheme in Florida 3 years ago, bilked investors out of $12 million, then disappeared. He's been using fake identities ever since, targeting wealthy women to fund his lifestyle." "How did you find this out?" "My girlfriend works for a financial crimes task force. She ran his photo through their database and got a hit. There's an active warrant for his arrest." I felt a surge of dark satisfaction. Tiffany's perfect man was a federal fugitive, and her perfect wedding was about to become a perfect disaster. "Are you going to call the FBI?" Mike asked. "Not yet. I want to see how this plays out first." "Jason, that's dangerous. If you know about a federal fugitive and don't report it, you could be charged with obstruction." "I'll report it. Just not today." I hung up and stared at Tiffany's wedding invitation. She'd wanted me to witness her perfect life with her perfect man. I was definitely going to attend, but not as the pathetic ex-boyfriend she expected to see. I was going to be the guy who brought down her entire world. 2 weeks later, I drove to Austin for Tiffany's wedding. I'd told the girls I was visiting Mike, which was technically true. He was going to be my backup for what I had planned. The wedding was being held at a luxury resort outside the city, the kind of place that charges $500 a night for rooms that look like they were decorated by someone who'd never heard of subtlety. Tiffany had spared no expense, which made sense since Gregory was paying for everything with stolen money. I arrived during the cocktail hour, wearing my best suit and carrying a small gift bag. The other guests were exactly what I'd expected: Instagram influencers, crypto bros, and the kind of people who use entrepreneur as a personality trait. Tiffany spotted me immediately and rushed over with her arms outstretched. She looked stunning in an off-white designer gown that probably cost more than my car. "Jason, you came. I'm so happy to see you." She hugged me tightly, and I caught the scent of expensive perfume and desperation. Despite her smile, I could see stress lines around her eyes. "Congratulations, Tiffany. You look beautiful." "Thank you. Wait until you meet Gregory. He's everything I told you and more." She led me across the terrace to where Gregory was holding court with a group of admirers, telling some story about his latest investment opportunity. He was exactly as I'd expected, tall, handsome, and radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never facing real consequences. "Gregory, darling, I want you to meet Jason. We dated in college." Gregory's smile faltered slightly when he saw me, and I realized he recognized me from somewhere. It took me a moment to remember where we'd met. "Jason Fairburn," I said, extending my hand. "We actually met before, about 4 years ago. You were calling yourself Greg Stevens then, trying to sell cryptocurrency investments at that tech conference in Dallas." The color drained from Gregory's face. He remembered me now. I'd been the guy who'd asked too many pointed questions about his business model during his presentation, eventually forcing him to admit he had no actual cryptocurrency to sell. "I think you have me confused with someone else," Gregory said, his voice tight. "No, I'm pretty sure it was you. You had the same pitch about guaranteed returns and exclusive opportunities. Whatever happened to that cryptocurrency venture?" Tiffany looked confused. "Honey, what's he talking about?" "Nothing, sweetheart. Just a case of mistaken identity." But I could see the panic in Gregory's eyes. He knew I knew, and he was trying to figure out how much damage I could do. "I brought you a wedding gift," I said, handing Gregory the small bag I'd been carrying. Inside was a USB drive containing everything Mike's girlfriend had found about Gary Schultz, along with a note that read, "For old time's sake, congratulations on the new identity." Gregory opened the bag, read the note, and went completely white. "Excuse me," he said to Tiffany. "I need to make a quick phone call." He walked away quickly, pulling out his phone. I could see him having an animated conversation with someone, probably his lawyer or an accomplice. Tiffany watched him go with a puzzled expression. That was weird. Gregory never gets flustered. Maybe he's just nervous about the wedding. Maybe. So tell me about you. How's married life? Kids? I gave her a brief summary of my divorce proceedings, leaving out the more sordid details. Tiffany listened with the kind of fake sympathy that influencers had perfected for their audiences. "I'm so sorry, Jason. But maybe it's for the best. You deserve someone who appreciates you." "Like you did?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "You left me because I wasn't ambitious enough, remember? You said I'd never amount to anything, that I was too ordinary for your dreams." Tiffany's cheeks flushed. "I was young and stupid. I didn't know what I wanted." "And now you do?" "Gregory is everything I ever dreamed of. He's successful, generous, passionate about life. He makes me feel like anything is possible." I almost felt sorry for her. What exactly does Gregory do for work? He's an angel investor. He helps fund startup companies and mentors entrepreneurs. He's incredibly successful. Has he ever shown you his office? Introduced you to his business partners? Tiffany's expression grew defensive. "Why are you asking so many questions?" "Just curious. You know how I am with details." Gregory returned from his phone call looking even more agitated. He whispered something in Tiffany's ear, and she nodded reluctantly. "Jason, it was wonderful seeing you, but Gregory and I need to handle some last-minute wedding details. I hope you enjoy the ceremony." She kissed my cheek and walked away with Gregory, who shot me a look that could have melted steel. I found Mike at the bar, nursing a whiskey and watching the drama unfold. "That went well," he said. "Gregory looks like he's about to have a heart attack." "He knows I know. The question is whether he'll run or try to bluff his way through the wedding." "What's your plan?" "I wait. If he runs, Tiffany gets humiliated but avoids marrying a federal fugitive. If he stays, I call in the cavalry during the ceremony." "You're enjoying this way too much." "Laura is screwing our real estate agent in our marital bed. Tiffany invited me here to rub her perfect life in my face, and I'm going through a divorce that's going to cost me half of everything I've worked for. Forgive me if I take a little satisfaction in watching someone else's life implode." The ceremony was scheduled for sunset, with cocktails continuing until then. I spent the time mingling and gathering intelligence. Gregory's friends were all vague about their business relationships with him, and several mentioned that he'd been asking them for loans recently. As the sun began to set, guests gathered on the resort's main terrace for the ceremony. Tiffany looked radiant as she walked down the aisle, her dress trailing behind her like a white river. Gregory waited at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking like a movie star despite the sweat beading on his forehead. The officiant began the ceremony with the usual platitudes about love and commitment. I waited until he asked if anyone had any reason why the couple shouldn't be wed. That's when I stood up and raised my hand. "I do." The entire wedding party turned to stare at me. Tiffany's face went from radiant joy to mortified horror in about 2 seconds. Gregory looked like he wanted to murder me with his bare hands. "Sir," the officiant said nervously, "this is highly irregular." "I apologize for the interruption," I said, pulling out my phone, "but I think the bride should know that she's about to marry a federal fugitive." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Tiffany gripped her bouquet like a weapon. "Jason, what are you doing?" she hissed. "Saving you from making the biggest mistake of your life." I held up my phone, showing a photo from the FBI's most wanted website. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Gary Schultz, also known as Gregory Shaw, wanted for securities fraud and running a $12 million Ponzi scheme." The resemblance was unmistakable, Several guests pulled out their own phones, comparing the FBI photo to the man standing at the altar. Gregory finally snapped, "You son of a jerk! You have no idea what you're dealing with." He lunged toward me, but Mike intercepted him with a tackle that would have made his high school football coach proud. They crashed into a table of wedding favors, sending personalized champagne flutes flying. "Call the police," someone shouted. "Already done," I said, holding up my phone. "I called the FBI field office 20 minutes ago. They should be here any moment." As if on cue, 3 black SUVs pulled into the resort's circular driveway. Federal agents in suits emerged and walked purposefully toward the terrace. Tiffany dropped her bouquet and stared at Gregory, who was struggling to get out from under Mike's considerable bulk. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gregory stopped struggling and looked at her with something that might have been genuine regret. "Tiffany, I can explain." "Is it true?" she repeated, louder this time. "Yes," he said quietly. "But I love you. That part was real." Tiffany slapped him so hard the sound echoed across the terrace. Then she kicked him in the ribs with her designer wedding shoes. "You bastard! You lying, scheming bastard! I planned my entire future around you." The FBI agents reached the terrace and immediately took control of the situation. The lead agent, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, flashed her badge and approached Gregory. "Gary Schultz, you're under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering." They cuffed him while reading his rights. Gregory didn't resist. The fight had gone out of him completely. As they led him away, he looked back at Tiffany. "I'm sorry. I really did love you." "Go to hell," she replied. The guests stood in stunned silence as the FBI vehicles drove away with their prisoner. The officiant cleared his throat awkwardly. "I suppose the ceremony is concluded," he said. Tiffany stood alone at the altar in her expensive wedding dress, surrounded by thousands of dollars worth of flowers and decorations, looking like the protagonist of a particularly brutal fairy tale. I walked over to her, and she looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you do this to me?" "I didn't do this to you, Tiffany. He did. I just prevented you from becoming an accessory to federal crimes. You could have told me privately. You didn't have to humiliate me in front of everyone." I thought about that for a moment. She was right. I could have handled this differently. But then I remembered her invitation, her comments about her perfect life and perfect man, her casual cruelty when she'd left me all those years ago. "You invited me here to witness your perfect happiness," I said. "You wanted me to see how much better your life was than mine. Well, congratulations. Mission accomplished." Tiffany's expression hardened. "You're a vindictive asshole, Jason." "Maybe, but I'm not a federal fugitive, and I'm not the one who destroyed your wedding. That was all Gregory, or Gary, or whatever his real name is." She turned and walked away, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. Mike appeared at my side, straightening his tie. "Well, that was eventful." "The FBI agent wants to talk to us," he said. "We're witnesses now." We spent the next hour giving statements to federal agents while the wedding guests dispersed in confused clusters. Many of them were probably wondering if they'd been targeted by Gregory's schemes as well. As we finally prepared to leave, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. I'd destroyed Tiffany's wedding and helped capture a federal fugitive, but it didn't change the fact that my own life was falling apart. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. "Heard about your ex's wedding on social media. Very mature, Jason." I showed the text to Mike, who shook his head. "Your wife is criticizing your maturity? The woman who's been cheating with your real estate agent?" "Ex-wife, hopefully. And yes, the irony isn't lost on me." We drove back to Dallas in comfortable silence, watching the Texas landscape roll by in the darkness. I had won a battle against Tiffany and Gregory, but the war with Laura was just beginning. When I got home, I found Scott's BMW parked in my driveway and Laura's key in my front door lock. They were inside my house, going through my belongings. It was time for the final confrontation. I walked into my own house to find Laura and Scott in my home office, rifling through my filing cabinets. Laura had a box of documents, and Scott was photographing papers with his phone. "Breaking and entering," I said calmly. "That's a felony in Texas." They both spun around, caught red-handed. Laura tried to recover her composure. "This is still my house too, Jason." "Actually, it's not. I had the locks changed, and you're no longer on the deed. You're trespassing." Scott stepped forward, trying to look intimidating. He was taller than me and obviously spent more time at the gym, but I'd had enough of being pushed around. "Listen, buddy," he said. "Laura has a right to her belongings." "Her belongings, yes. My financial records, no." I pointed at the documents they'd been photographing. Those are my tax returns, bank statements, and investment records. What exactly were you planning to do with them? Laura's face flushed. I need to know what assets we have for the divorce proceedings. You mean what assets I have that you want to take? Scott moved closer, trying to intimidate me. Maybe you should be more cooperative. Laura's been through enough. I laughed. Laura's been through enough? She's the one who cheated. She's the one who destroyed our family. She's the one who moved out to shack up with you. Watch your mouth, Scott warned. Or what? You'll beat me up in my own home, in front of my security cameras? I pointed to the small devices I'd installed in every room after Laura moved out. Both of them looked around nervously, suddenly realizing they were being recorded. That's right, I said. Every word, every action, all recorded in high definition, including you two breaking into my house and stealing my documents. Scott's aggressive posture deflated. We weren't stealing anything. Then what do you call photographing someone's private financial records without permission? Laura tried a different approach. Jason, we need to discuss the divorce settlement reasonably. I'm entitled to half of our marital assets. Our marital assets? You mean the assets I earned while you were screwing around behind my back? The assets you were planning to share with your boyfriend here? Scott's face reddened. I don't want your money, man. Really? Because Laura's been telling people you asked her for a loan to invest in some property deal. Funny thing is, I know you haven't sold a house in 8 months. So where exactly were you planning to get the money to pay her back? Scott and Laura exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. That's what I thought, I said. You were planning to take my money in the divorce and immediately invest it with Scott in some scheme that would conveniently lose it all? Very clever. You're paranoid, Laura said. Am I? Let me tell you what I think happened. Scott targeted you because you're a successful lawyer with access to significant assets. He seduced you, convinced you that I was holding you back, and started planning how to get his hands on our money. The affair was never about love. It was about a long-term con. Scott's expression confirmed my suspicions. He was a small-time grifter who'd seen an opportunity and taken it. The problem is, I continued, I'm not as stupid as you both thought. I documented everything. The affair, the lies, the financial manipulation, and now this breaking and entering. I have enough evidence to destroy both of you in court. Laura's composure finally cracked completely. What do you want? I want you out of my house. I want you to stop trying to steal my assets. And I want you to explain to our daughters why their mother chose a 2-bit con artist over their family. Scott's not a con artist? Isn't he? Scott, tell Laura about your real estate license. When did it expire? Scott's face went white. Laura turned to stare at him. Tell her about the 3 previous marriages to wealthy women. Tell her about the bankruptcy you filed under a different name. Tell her about the restraining order your last wife took out against you. Laura looked like she was going to be sick. Is that true? Scott couldn't meet her eyes. It's complicated. It's not complicated, I said. It's fraud. You're a professional grifter who targets vulnerable women, and Laura was your latest mark. Laura sat down heavily in my desk chair, the weight of her situation finally hitting her. She'd destroyed her marriage, abandoned her children, and ruined her reputation for a man who'd been using her from the beginning. I need you both to leave, I said. Now, before I call the police. Scott was already heading for the door, but Laura remained seated. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. That's not my problem anymore. You made your choices. What about the girls? They have a home here with me. You can visit them when you get your life sorted out. Laura started crying. Real tears this time, not the calculated ones she'd used before. I'm sorry, Jason. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Yes, you did. You meant for all of it to happen. You just didn't mean to get caught. After they left, I called David Martinez to report the break-in and update him on the situation. Then I called my daughters to let them know they could come home. Is Mom okay? Beth asked when I picked them up. She's going through a difficult time, I said, but she loves you both, and this isn't your fault. Are you okay, Dad? I looked at my 2 daughters in the rearview mirror, innocent victims of their mother's selfishness and my desire for revenge. I'm getting there, I said. That night, after the girls were asleep, I sat in my quiet house and reflected on everything that had happened. I'd destroyed Tiffany's wedding, exposed Gregory as a federal fugitive, caught Laura and Scott in multiple lies and crimes, and protected my assets from their schemes. I'd won every battle, but the victory felt hollow. My marriage was over, my family was broken, and my children would grow up in a divided home. But as I looked around at the house I'd built, the life I'd created, and the future I was determined to protect, I realized something important. I was still standing. Laura had tried to destroy me, Scott had tried to rob me, and Tiffany had tried to humiliate me. They'd all failed. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Laura got a small settlement and supervised visitation with the girls. Scott disappeared after his real identity was exposed, probably to find his next mark. Gregory was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Tiffany's influencer career never recovered from the wedding scandal. I kept the house, got primary custody of my daughters, and started dating a wonderful woman named Jennifer, who appreciated honesty and loyalty. Sometimes people get exactly what they deserve. Sometimes they get exactly what they asked for. Laura had asked for excitement, passion, and a man who would sweep her off her feet. She got a con artist who stole her money and abandoned her when things got difficult. Tiffany had asked for a perfect man and a perfect life. She got a federal fugitive and a ruined reputation. They'd both gotten everything they asked for.